Also very good. You agree? Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Resourceful Therapist for January 22. I'm Philipa Thornton. I'm co-founder of the Resourceful Therapy Institute Australia, which I work within training and workshops with my husband, Chris Paulin, and we also run Marriage Works. Super excited to have a special guest here with a really great business background. Not only do we have a therapist, but also someone who has connections with a business mindset. And that's been an interesting career journey for the wonderful Neville Starrick. I'll give you a bit of information on Neville. So thank you, Neville, for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Neville has been, since about 2008, working with people long-term unemployed. I'm imagining that might have been a government organisation, which we can't mention. That would have been tough. And then you've continued on. You started your own private practice in 2014 after your Masters of Counselling in 2010. And there's been a lot of a career shift and journey for you over the years. Is that right, Neville? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I mean, counselling is the current space that I'm in after quite a variation over time leading up to that.
Perhaps you're what I like to call maybe a bit of a second lifer.
I feel like it's like about the fifth lifer for me, but anyway.
Yeah, of different careers. That the beautiful thing about therapy and psychology and counselling, your earlier stuff really helps set you up.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, Neville. And we've got a classic resource therapy question. And I'll reframe it a bit here. It's usually, what are you ready to change today, Neville? But it's going to be, what are you ready to share with us here today, Neville?
Well, firstly, I'd like to share a little bit about myself so that you get to know who I am and the journey that I've walked. But I'd also like to share with you some of the insights that I've gained in the process of moving into private practice and some of the things around running a business and having the therapist hat at the same time, and how do you manage all of that. And that's a journey that I can't say that I've perfected, but I'm certainly well on the way, and I've learned a lot on the way, and I'd love to share what it is that I've gained through the process.
Fantastic, Neville. That sounds amazing. And I can honestly say Neville has helped me because I connected with Neville, I think on Facebook, where he generously offered a free consultation, and he's helped me with Excel and his business acumen very much. He's a very patient, steady hand.
You downplay your abilities, Philipa.
Well, thank you, but honestly, I have got very low frustration tolerance. He is very patient and calm, especially when you're dealing with a new software thing. And you'll have his contact details in the information below. So please like and subscribe and connect with Neville on the business front, because I think it's an probably underutilized sort of thing we need to know as therapists, isn't it? Business, we've often great therapists are really, excuse me, I'm going to swear, crappy at promoting and marketing and business and keeping records, etc.
Yep. So our strength is in the training that we've got for the therapeutic side of things, and the other side of things, either we have some or we don't, and we kind of bumble along. So, yeah.
And you mentioned your previous fifth lives. What were some of those that have helped kind of inform you to where you are now, Neville?
Well, initially I went to university to be a primary school teacher. So I had this dream from the age of 4 that I was going to be a school teacher. And it was like, I worked all the way through school towards that end and got into university and did teacher training and struggled. It was like, this is really, really hard. I didn't expect that. Somehow I thought I was a good student, so I should be a good teacher. And it's like, no, not necessarily true. And so I had a lot of hurdles to overcome around confidence. I was very young when I went into teacher training, so I had things around my age. And when I completed my bachelor's degree, I did a 4-year bachelor's degree, and and was the first cohort at my college to actually do the 4th year. It was optional at that point, and I did the 4th year and came out at the tender age of 21 and got my first class, and struggled. And yeah, it was I loved working with the kids. I found that the teaching situation, I didn't feel like I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And the things that they don't tell you in teacher training is that what you do in the classroom is one thing, but then it's all the other stuff that gets attached. So the parent stuff, the staff stuff, the school expectations, the extracurricular stuff, all of that stuff was stuff that I wasn't actually prepared for. And yeah, and I hit it big time in my first teaching job and burned out. So I left teaching very briefly for about a year because I thought, it's me, it's my problem. I'm not a good teacher. And then challenged myself in that year to actually look at other things, develop some of my admin skills, and then decided I needed to go back to teaching to see if it really was me or whether there was something else going on. And it turns out that I could actually teach. But there was something about the context in which I first started teaching that was difficult for me. And yeah, long story short, in the end, I ended up teaching for about 7 years and got to a stage where I was overseas by that point and really felt like I don't really want to do teaching anymore. There's just too many things about the teaching in a school context that works against what I really want to do. And I had one of those pivotal dreams that sort of highlighted for me what the issues were, where I was basically sitting there with one of my classes, preparing for the day, and there was some event coming up, and I was very aware that there was lots to do, and so I was opening cupboards and pulling stuff out and preparing stuff, and suddenly realized I'm not alone in this room. Here it was, thinking it was the beginning of the school day, and around the edge of the room, sitting on chairs, were all of these adults that were just watching me do my stuff. And the sense that the vibe that I got from them was that they're watching to see me fail. And I was like, I don't want this. I woke up in a cold sweat and thought, I'm leaving teaching. I don't want to do that. So it was interesting. So then I kind of floundered a little bit for a while, went back to admin stuff, ended up working for a hospitality organization for what ended up being 5 years, did admin stuff for the first 3 and then moved into business training. And then I had the opportunity to come back to Australia from overseas and went and did my postgraduate study, completed my master's in counselling, and yeah, sort of been in the counselling space pretty much since then. So,
I imagine all that set you up very well for the counselling space. I'm sorry to hear about your teaching experience. I always feel teachers are so important.
They are, and I don't think they're supported as well as they need to be. I had somebody describe the school context as it's a melting pot or some kind of cauldron of expectation, and that was what I felt. And it was just like, yeah, it's a recipe for burnout if you're not ready for it, or you're not prepared for it, you don't have a temperament for it. And the people who stay, I say hats off to them, but it comes at a cost.
Absolutely. I do feel like that, I could hear you wanted the joy of the classroom and that experience, but all that administrivia and the dealing with.
Yeah, and the joy of actually getting people and getting children enthused about learning was what I was really attracted to, and I just couldn't do it. I just felt like curriculum was too rigid. I couldn't work with the kids where they were at or on the things that they were interested in because there was just too much rigidity around what we needed to get done and the things that they need to, the milestones they needed to get to, and it was just like my schooling experience was very different. So it was just like, I think I had a bit of a pipe dream that I was going to go into a very similar thing that I went to when I went to primary school, which was a 2-teacher school, very small school, and there a lot of autonomy in your learning.
Yeah, because I was thinking of that little 4-year-old. Where was he when he said, I want to be a teacher? Was it in that sort of context? It
was in that context, and I hadn't even started school at that stage. My older brother had, and I had I think I really looked forward to going to school. And I mean, we were living in Papua New Guinea at the time, going to an international school. It was very small, and just about everybody that was going to the school were people that we knew. So it was very safe. It was like the teachers we knew in other contexts, and so it was just like, okay. And yeah, I just loved the whole experience. The way that the two-teacher school worked was that we had the year 1 right through to year 8 at the time that I went there. And one teacher looked after the years 1 to 3, and the other teacher looked after years 4 to 8, or whoever happened to be there at that particular point in time. And then the teacher for the younger kids did all of the language arts across both halves of the school, and the other one did the maths across both halves of the school. And we would be basically have our time with the teacher, and then we'd be given tasks that we needed to work on by ourselves. And yeah, and got a lot of feedback, and the whole sticker thing was like, you completed work and got it ticked off and got a sticker if it was 100% right. It was just like, yeah. So, and you could go at your own pace. So for language, I know that I was actually moving way ahead of other kids in my year, in my age level, and was even catching up to my older brother. And he was just, yeah, he wasn't as keen on the language things, and I think he may have had some challenges as well. And I love to read. I love to do language work, so I just sort of powered on.
Oh, fantastic. What a special experience as well. As I was hearing that, I was thinking, it's like a beautiful sort of tribal collective, you know, like that.
It was very much so. It was very safe. And it was one of the things when my family moved to Australia when I was 9, it was one of the things that we lost, that we didn't have that same community that we'd been connected with. I mean, and things were more fractured here in Australia. And I don't think I could have articulated that when we first arrived, but when I was doing my counselling training, that was one of the things that I remember reflecting on, was like, because we were doing some stuff on genograms and looked at community genograms. And it was like, my community, how it had changed significantly from at the age of 9.
Yeah.
And never quite recovered that, what it is that we'd had when we were up in Papua New Guinea. So it was interesting sort of looking at the impact of that and the expectations of the relationship and the longings, always looking for something that could never quite find. And yeah, actually I'm thinking,
you were in this village, beautiful village, and then come to Australia, such a culture shock in a way, and I imagine some grief and loss of,
which was unrecognized at the time. And so, and also we moved from being in essentially a mountainous rural area into a city, which was like a big shift right there initially. And it was just like, whoa. So lots and lots of major change going on. And that the change continued on for the next 4 years, where we moved multiple times. And then it wasn't until I was partway into high school that things kind of settled. So
that can't have been easy, having a lot of moving.
It was challenging.
And that's the beautiful thing about therapists, your own experience, I think, informs us so much.
And that's one of the things that I've gravitated towards in my therapy stuff, is about helping people to work through their significant life changes, because so often we go through life changes and we don't realize that there is grief involved where a change is concerned. And then we have all of these reactions that we're sitting there going, what's wrong with me? Not realizing what it is that we're dealing with. And also the whole sense of like, well, I've been able to cope before, why am I not coping now? And having all of those doubting of self type of conversations, where it's just like, well, something's happened and I'm not okay. And I don't know why I'm not okay. I should be okay, but I'm not. And sort of beating yourself up about all of that stuff. So.
Well, I'd sort of, as you know, I come from a parts model. To be a 9-year-old part kind of stuck going, what the hell happened? And not having any voice or...
and not even knowing that you could even talk about that kind of stuff, because my whole family was dealing with this. And it was not until years and years later when I discovered stuff around the third culture kid experience and all of that kind of nuance, to the moving for us, that I started having conversations with my family. And I was an adult by then. I was in my 30s, and was starting to have conversations with my parents about what actually happened for them, and what happened for my siblings in that experience. And I mean, because I'm the second oldest of 4 boys.
Yep.
My older brother went through he had more schooling changes than I did, because we arrived in Australia and he finished primary school and went into high school, and then we moved, and he moved to another high school, and then we moved again, so we went to a 3rd high school. And so he had more schooling changes than I did. I still had a few, but not quite as many as he did. My youngest brother is almost 5 years younger, and he didn't remember really much. He was only 4 when we left, so he didn't remember very much about that. So he's had this whole experience of like, I know that we've been somewhere else, but I don't have many memories of my own of that experience. And and then me and my twin brother were kind of sitting there, sort of wrestling with the coming into Australia at the preteen type of stage, and all of that happening very shortly after we arrived, and moving into puberty and all that stuff, and then all the changes going on with that. It was kind of, it was a lot to deal with. So
yeah, definitely. I'm feeling, a therapist going, oh boy, your teenage older brother, hard high school, and then you're just starting to connect and then have to be uprooted. There you are with your twin as well. Would you say twin? Yeah.
Yes.
So you had a really close sibling there that in the same age and stage, but also experiencing very different things.
Yes, and my twin brother, we're fraternal twins, so we're not at all identical at all. And we were developing at different rates and having different experiences. And it was interesting talking to him about what was going on for him, because my perspective was that he was actually coping really well, and he was a fighter. So he was just like, anybody tried to pick on him, he was sort of, he really let him have it. Whereas I wasn't that kind of a person at all. And so I'm sitting there feeling like I got hurt because I wouldn't stand up for myself, and he's going, I wish I didn't have to stand up for myself because people picked on me. And so
different personalities and different aspects of yourselves, and your fighter or flighter, and how we cope and manage.
Yes, all that stuff going on. So
fascinating. And when you grow up and you talk to your adult siblings and you're like, gosh, did we grow up in the same family?
Well, we did, but we had very different experiences. And I think that was one of the learnings, was just the realization that even though we shared a family experience, what happened in the home was one thing, but what we experienced outside of the home was different. And even the way that we saw stuff was different. Our memories, it's always funny when you sit there, have the sibling chats about, I remember this. It's like, well, no, that didn't happen. It happened like this. It's like, well, that's from where you were standing. So,
And just on the remembering thing, do you remember, I know you said as a 4-year-old you had this amazing dream of being a teacher, and you followed that through. When did you decide, perhaps in yourself, that you wanted to be a therapist, a counsellor, Neville, if you track that back?
I think I had always been, maybe not always, I had had a lot of experience, even when I was a teenager, of people just wanting to tell me stuff. And I'd just sit there and I'd listen to people, and people would tell me the most incredible things, and I'd be kind of like, why are you telling me, type of thing. And but feeling also very privileged with that as well. But I didn't have any idea at that stage, because I was so fixated on being a school teacher. I had no idea that I could actually do anything with that. I just thought, this is just me. I don't mind listening to people, and people seem to feel quite comfortable and safe to tell me things that they probably wouldn't tell a lot of other people. And I was able to hold the confidences for people as well. And for some reason, that was something that came quite easily to me. And then when I went through Teachers College and then had my first experience of burnout with my first teaching job, the whole experience of recovering from that made me start to question, it's like, well, what other things could I do if I don't do teaching? And I looked at the possibility of doing a counselling course at that stage, but I was only like still wasn't even mid-20s at that point, and kind of looked at it and thought, I don't feel like I've got enough life experience to be able to go and do that. But I kind of, and I didn't really quite know what was involved in being a counselor. I'd never been to one. So I'd never been involved in therapy, to my knowledge anyway. I'd never been involved in therapy. I didn't know anybody who had. And, but this whole thing of being a counselor was something that kind of sat with me from that point on. And I just kind of thought, I wonder if there's a door that will open at some point for me to do that. So I went overseas. I had a whole bunch of more difficult experiences that I had to process through, which again, I didn't do without therapy and regrets. But yeah, it was just kind of, I reached a point when I'd been living, before I came back to Australia, I was starting to think I need to come back to Australia, but I didn't know what I was going to come back for. And then I was also having people that were in my circle where I was living were saying, it's like, you seem to have a gift to be able to get alongside people. Why don't you look at a counselling degree? And so I did look at a counselling degree where I was at that particular point in time. It was very expensive, and there were lots and lots and lots of hoops because I hadn't done my education there. And it was going to be more difficult than useful to actually go through that process. So, but I came back for a visit to Australia in 2005, visit family and catch up with things. And I popped into the college where I'd done my teacher training, which had expanded by that stage to actually include a School of Social Sciences, which hadn't been there at all when I had been going through Teachers College. And I looked at their counselling degree, their postgraduate counselling degree. And I just had this sense as I was reading through it. It's just like, tick, had conversations about this, read books on this, done courses on this, interested in that. And it was just kind of like, it seemed like the course was tailor-made for me. And I'm just sitting there going, wow, I didn't know this was here. And I didn't know that, for some reason I'd had it in my head that because I trained as a teacher that I actually couldn't go and do study in another field. And I don't know where I got that idea from, but that was sitting in my head for ages. And somehow I managed to work through that hurdle. I made contact with the college after I returned to where I was living overseas, and then got the process going to actually apply to start to see if I would actually get in. Now, in the meantime, I'm working as a business trainer, and the department I was working for seemed to really like having me there. I was like the token Australian, and it was just like, yeah, okay. And there were lots of things that were going on within the organization that I was working for that the training department was getting heavily involved in. And I've reached a point where it's just like, I actually need to let somebody know that I'm thinking about heading back overseas, heading back to Australia and pursuing postgraduate study. But there was a risk in doing that as well. It's just like, well, when's the right time to do that? Because at that stage, I didn't actually have any confirmation that I'd even been accepted for enrollment. And so I'm sitting there going like, what's going on? What's going on? We had a team building day where they were looking at what's going on for the next 12 months. And I'm sitting there suddenly realizing I need to say something to my manager because I may not be here for the next 12 months. And there's a very good chance that I will only be here for another 3 or 4 months at the rate things are going. But I didn't have any confirmation. So I scheduled a meeting with them, with my director and the manager, to let them know this is what I'm contemplating. I don't have a confirmation that I've been accepted into the program yet, but this is what I'm looking to do. So you need to know because you're making plans, and I can't get too invested in anything if there's a possibility that I'm going to be moving out. A funny story that happened around that time, because I had basically sworn my director and manager to secrecy from the rest of my team members because I thought they don't need to know this yet. And I wasn't prepared to talk about it until I knew for certain what I was doing. But one of my colleagues sat there and played around with a PowerPoint presentation. It was the time when I think the Star Wars prequels were coming out. I think the second one had come out with Ewan McGregor and playing Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so he had decided that he was, as a joke, he was going to put together this little PowerPoint slide that he'd superimposed my face on the face of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So it was like me being wielding the lightsaber. And he talked about how Neville Starrick is something along the lines of, I hope I still got it, but something along the lines of he's going back to Australia to pursue an acting career, and he's going to do this, that, and the other. And I'm sitting there going, it was the timing was just absolutely. I could not believe that it came out when it did, because it's like I'm sitting there going, does he know? And it's just like, I didn't tell him. And I'm looking at my manager, and my manager comes walking out of his office sort of going, I didn't say anything. And it's just like, I'm sitting there going, well, people are going to wonder what that's about. And but,
door opening.
but it was just kind of like, it was just kind of like, what do I do with that? Because I mean, I am going back to Australia, but nobody knows that yet. And so here I was having this like almost a crisis around like, what do I do with it? And my colleagues had no idea. They had no idea, and they thought it was really funny. And I think they were laughing at my reaction, not knowing what was behind my reaction at all. And so when I finally got the confirmation that I was accepted into the program, we had this staff meeting where I finally said I was going to announce it. I told my manager and director that I was going to announce it. Well, the guy that had done the slide, and the one who had his cubicle just opposite mine, who both were raging extroverts and thought it was extremely funny, this whole thing about the going back to Australia stuff, speechless. It was just kind of like, yeah, it was almost like, I'm going back to Australia, and they go, what?
Wow, that collective unconscious, eh?
Oh, it was just bizarre. It was absolutely a whole bizarre chain of events, and it was just like, whoa.
Talk about signposts.
Yes.
Of doors opening.
Yes, absolutely.
Communities like that really help us recognize where the next things are, the world around us, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was fascinating. It was fascinating, and it was such a difficult thing to hold, though, because it's just kind of like, I feel like I'm holding secrets that I don't really want to hold, but it's really important to not say anything right now, because nothing is actually concrete yet about the direction that things are going. So it's like,
yes.
So, but yeah, so it was priceless seeing my colleagues' reaction. It was just like,
you've got to find those slides.
I'm hoping I still have them. I had a computer crash after I came back to Australia, so I might not have them anymore. But yeah, but it was absolutely amazing.
And so that, yeah, amazing. And so then you went, you studied. One can the wise one, I was thinking. Yeah, with that. Yeah. And I'm imagining that sort of admin business type training that you're doing might have been started to shift, say, maybe where you are now, if you like. There might have been an intersection into the business.
Well, what was actually happening for me, because I had done 3 years of admin stuff in the hospitality organization prior to doing the business training, and the business training had an admin component too. And one of the things that I was doing as part of my business training stuff was actually training people in the use of your Microsoft applications like Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and so on. So people within the organization could access classes that would actually get them to do different things. So that built a whole level of skill, because I'd already been building some of my Microsoft application experience earlier on when I had my burnout experience after my first year of teaching.
Yeah.
So that introduced me to the Microsoft applications, but actually teaching other people how to use it actually expanded my knowledge and understanding of what was possible in those applications, which has come in really, really handy in a lot of ways. And I mean, Excel, the Microsoft applications have changed even since I was teaching them on a regular basis. So it's been easier to roll with the changes that are going through. Yeah, so the admin stuff has been a constant since I started working on the admin skills. It's been a constant positive in my experience, because it meant that working with a new system or working with different applications, I'm actually reasonably comfortable with adapting to the technology. I wouldn't say that I'm a techie, but I'm not averse to learning new things, and I'm quite happy to sit there and play around with things and see how things work. And I know some people are not comfortable with that. They feel like, oh, I'm going to break things. I'm going to make a mistake I won't know how to fix, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm generally much more confident with those kind of things because I've had a reasonable amount of experience using a lot of these tools anyway. So that's come in really handy. So and the admin stuff in the various roles that I held in a counselling employee role were an absolute asset, because I mean, here I was working with customized programs that were linked with government, and you needed to be comfortable in using the technology. You needed to be able to be familiar with get familiar with how things worked and follow the processes. And yeah, so and then moving into the non-government organization that I worked for, the last place that I worked for, there were, again, funding body reports and stuff like that using particular systems, and the organization didn't have any systems in place for me to record what I was doing with my client work, as far as keeping track of number of clients and how many attendees and all that kind of stuff. So I developed something that helped me to track what I was doing with clients and which clients showed up and where I was at and all that kind of stuff. And so I got something going that automated a whole bunch of things that gave me information, because I was required to do a monthly report of like, how many clients have I seen and what's the demographics around that and all that kind of stuff. So so I streamlined some systems just based on my understanding of that, and then also trained some of my colleagues who were in the same counselling space to use the same system, so that we were all using the same thing. And I was working as a part-time generalist counsellor in that particular role, and we had volunteer counsellors there as well, and we had a family therapist there as well who used different systems. So some of the stuff that I did wasn't going to help the family therapist, but certainly it enabled us to actually get a better handle on the reporting side of things, instead of having to scrabble through your individual client notes to work out like, well, who have I seen, how many have I seen, what's going on. And yeah, and then there was also a tiny little bit of almost like management type of stuff, even though I wasn't in the manager role, to actually train people on how to use things and to actually get buy-in around like, well, this is what it's useful for, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. And this helps. I mean, for me, the volunteer hours, I was required to go and collect that. And it's like, rather than me hounding you every month to give me the numbers, if you go and fill in this form and you're consistent with that, then I can just go to the form and I can use the details that you've got, and I can get the information when I need it. So that was a bit of wasn't always received well, but some people are just like, I'm so time poor, but it's like, but this would actually save you time if you did it. So.
Neville, if you can. and that's, I'm hearing systems, and I'm also hearing like, gosh, this is no wonder this is all set you well in place to private practice. Some of the things that a lot of therapists struggle with is the business side of business, because it is business as well as it is humanity and working well and good. You know, so you've now developed like the therapy business booster. I think even since I've known you, I hope I was like a bit of a catalyst in that. I think
the work that you and I did together around your systems was an element of moving in that direction. I mean, I had only just started doing some tutoring and online workshops on the Excel spreadsheet around doing budgeting and stuff like that when we first met. And so that was starting to give me an inkling of like, hey, there is a need. Not everybody knows how to use these tools, and people are running to get into spending lots of money on accounting software, which also has its own learning curve and so on, when they don't actually have to have that expenditure, at least not starting up. And I mean, if you want to move to that point, that's fine. But there's this whole there are tools that if you've already got Excel on your computer, there are ways that you can set things up so that you don't need to purchase anything extra. So, and for me, one of the things that I'd also been doing on a personal level was I'd also been tracking my expenses and my income for years, absolutely years. And that was partly because I had been in a situation, my very first teaching job, I got paid once a month, and I had to keep track of my money, because it's like the money had to stretch for that entire amount of time. So I had to know where it was going and how much was coming in, and then and trying to work out what my goals were with all of that too. So, and once I got really good with Excel, I started using Excel to track that kind of information. And that translated very well then into, well, here's a business. Here, let's track my income and my expenses and work out where the expenses are, where the income's coming from. I mean, some people wouldn't go to the level of detail that I do, but I like to see the detail. Yeah.
I have to tell you that sometimes, like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, because it's really led you, hasn't it, to a whole nother kind of, as well, on top of your beautiful counseling therapy experiences, you're now coaching other therapists from this, and you know, because money, we were talking a little bit earlier, is a bit of a dirty word.
Yes.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? What do you see as the biggest issues, like private practice owners perhaps we're probably talking more about here, they struggle with as you coming to see you?
I think there are a few things that are cropping up commonly. One, of course, is the money issue, because I think so often people move into the therapy space and they want to help people and they don't want to put obstacles in the way to providing help. And so they think, well, my solution is that I will offer my services at an affordable rate, whatever that means.
Yes.
Now, affordable is great for the client, but what I discovered when I went into private practice is that I started off thinking like $80 a session was a lot. And I mean, I'd been coming from a non-government organization where people were charging, were only had to pay at the most $30. So I thought $80 is just like, oh, that's such a lot. And then I sat there and looked at how many sessions I'd have to do to make a decent wage. And I thought, I don't want to be doing that much work. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, something has to change. But it took me a long, long time to actually get to a point where I could actually go over $100 an hour, 100 hours.
What did it take to get there?
I think what it took was the realization that I cannot afford not to raise my prices. And it was the realization that the business side of things is a two-way street here. It's like, it's great that I want to serve these clients and provide opportunities for them to access service. At the same time, if I don't get adequate income, I can't run my business. It's like, and I can't live, and it's kind of nice to eat. So,
everybody head shoulder. Burnout. I was just thinking, it's like almost a parallel to earlier.
Yes,
we are not, we're not a charity situation, and so it took that to say, yes, I need to charge more.
Yep.
Because you deliver a lot, I imagine, and they do. They really, there's preparation. It's also a form of self-responsibility.
Yes, and I think it was just a realization. I think I came to the realization is that the people that I used to work with at the non-government organization were came from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Yes. They could not afford my services. So I needed to actually start thinking about who I was, who could afford my service. And that was a big deal in itself. I'm still not sure if I fully worked that through, but it's just the realization that I need people who can pay for what I do.
Yeah. And
it'd be nice if I'd be able to support people who are hard done by and don't have a lot of money. Altruistically, I'd like to be able to do that, but realistically, if I have even a handful of people at that rate, I have to make up for it somewhere else for all the money that I don't get to come into my business.
Hard.
Yes,
and
often they're ungrateful.
Oh yeah, not the easy. Sometimes the expectations.
Yeah, it's just like, well, I mean, I want to pay as little as possible, but I want the best possible service, and it's just like, well, you can't have it both ways. So yeah, and that was interesting. I mean, I had a client or two that transferred across from my NGO who wanted to keep working with me, and they wrestled with the money issue, and I wrestled with the money issue because I know what they had, where they had come from, and knew that the situation that they had, the financial situation that they were used to with the non-government organisation expectations, and which is I just can't. And when I had one client that sat there and said to me, "It's like I really can't afford your fees, but I really want to keep working with you," and I was like. And I had to really resist the urge to sit there and discount for them because it was just like, really sorry, I'd love to discount for you. And if I discount for you, I'm not going to make ends meet.
And it is about leading by example in a sort of way. We need to, in a self-caring, responsible, harmonious way, is to do that. Because once I know myself, I have these rates, but that means you can have the sliding scale people occasionally, and obviously it's a balanced caseload because it's important, because the people who are paying your full fee can help
supplement,
having a couple of spaces there that allow people, and because I'm a psychologist, I can bulk bill, but if I bulk bill people, I'd be working 1 million hours a week.
Yes,
I'd be burnt out, and even with things, you know, so I do have a couple of people on my list, and they're long term, but most of the time it's like, and I've made a decision for myself about, you know, if I'm working after hours and stuff, about premium rates. That, because I worked at another NGO actually, and they didn't, but they were charging me out at a premium rate.
Yes. So,
I made a promise.
Yes. And I get that. It's some interesting little practices that are out there that it's just like, well, we'll use you for whatever we can get out of you, and we'll profit from that, but you won't. Like,
and I find too, people think that, oh, that they're quite expensive, and I am, they must be good.
And it's actually interesting, that mentality, isn't it? I've discovered that a little bit too. I mean, I've got certain people that are just sit there and like, they hear the price and it's like, oh no, it's just like, no, I can't afford that. And I'm actually starting to work out how I can address that, because it's not so much that they can't afford it, it's just that it's not a priority. I don't want to spend that much money on myself, or I don't feel that I should have to. And that's one of the things that I'm finding I'm educating a lot in my area, is letting people know, if you value your well-being and your health, what are you prepared to do for it? What are you prepared to do for it? How much are you prepared to invest in it? How much time are you prepared to give it? How much finance are you prepared to give to it? Because if you're not prepared to give time or finance, not much is likely to change.
And if you think about it in that way too, they're not really probably ready for therapy.
No. And so I'm actually okay with people saying, I can't afford that. I mean, I had a client last year who was like, I really like what you're saying, and I'm just really stuck on the money. And okay. And for me, it's just the realization. One of the things that I say to myself to help me feel better is that they have options if they want something cheaper.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't have to be me. The people that I want to work with the people who are prepared to pay me what I feel I'm worth, and who are willing to commit time, which is one of the reasons why I ended up moving when I relocated down to the area I'm living in now. I actually moved away from doing a session by session approach.
Yes. Okay.
And actually moved to doing a package approach work, because I had the stats from the clients, my clients that I've been working with over the years, where I could basically look and say the average number of sessions that clients have needed to be able to do what they needed to do is about 5. So why am I trying to encourage people to come one session at a time? Because it kind of sends a message that, well, change can happen in one session. It's like, that's actually really unlikely. It's really, really unlikely. And if it does happen, I have to really question what they came to therapy for. But anyway, be that as it may, I can actually sit there and say, in my experience now, most people need about 5 sessions to actually work through what they need to work through. Some people need more, some people need less. Rarely do they need less, but I will grant that some people will need less. And so I basically say, look, I'm asking you to A, prepay, and B, commit to either 5 sessions or 10 sessions, depending on what you think you need. And then that's where my scaling comes in. So it's like, if you decide you're going to commit to a 10-session package, there's some discount attached to paying for 10 sessions up front. And if you do a 5-session package, there is a discount on my 1-session rate, which I don't offer. But if I were to offer a single session rate, this is what the rate would be, and you get a discount on that for paying 5 sessions up front. So there's still a bit of a sliding scale going on, and I've reassessed that periodically. But it's just, I then know I'm working with this client for at least 5 sessions.
Yep.
The last session of the package is always a review where it's like, okay, where are you now compared to where you were when we started? And what do you need to do next? So do you need more therapy? Do you need to take a break and see how you go? Do you want to do some check-ins to just make sure that you hold the changes that you've made? Do you feel that you need another package? Like, where are you at? And sort of put that thing out there and have that conversation. And what I suspect is happening for clients, and I mean, I had people that sat there, and I had this mentality myself before I moved to the package system. I had somebody suggest this as a possibility. Why don't you offer a certain number of packages, a certain number of sessions in a package? And I was like, I'd never heard of anybody doing that before. And so it's like, how would you do that? And is it ethical? And I get that thrown at me a lot. Is it ethical? And I'm sitting there going, well, why is it not ethical?
Of course it's ethical. People get to choose, select, and you're offering them a service that says, I'm going to give your space is guaranteed.
Yep.
With me. I'd say that's a very ethical setup, actually, because it contains someone, it gives them
but it also gives them the opportunity to actually say, I don't have to commit for the rest of my life. So it takes out some of the anxiety around how long is this process going to take. And I don't guarantee that 5 sessions is going to be enough. I say, we'll do 5 sessions and see where you're at. Because, and I'm really upfront with this, that I can't guarantee what you're going to need until we get into the process. And you may discover as you go into the process that there are other things that 5 sessions is not long enough to deal with. Or you may find that actually the issue that you thought was a really big issue wasn't really the real issue, or it wasn't as big an issue as you thought it was, and you're actually doing okay with 5 sessions. But if you've resolved what you needed to do in 3 sessions, you've got another 2 sessions up your sleeve, just in case you wanted to do a check-in on how you're holding things. So it's kind of like, you've got choices here. I put an expiry date on the packages so that they're not hanging out forever. So it's just like for 5 sessions, you've got 3 months to use up those 5 sessions. For a 10-session package, you've got 6 months to use up those sessions. And that way we can space the sessions out the way that suits you, but they're not dragging on forever.
That's really
good. And it gives some flexibility there around, like, I mean, people sit there and say, what do you want? Do you need weekly sessions? I said, well, if you feel that that's what you need, we can do it as weekly sessions. But my goal is that you're going to eventually not need therapy. So our goal is to eventually get to a point where we can space those sessions out and it'll still be okay. And then we'll see how you go. And if something changes, we can bring things back again and do sessions closer together again if that's what you need. But it's very, very interesting.
That is gold. Okay, people, there's a couple of gold nuggets Neville has given you. Charge more immediately. And I imagine that you probably do an annual.
I would like to say that I do an annual. My goal was to actually increase my prices in January, but because of what's been going on in the current environment, I've actually held off because I felt like one of the issues that I feel people are wrestling with is the uncertainty about their jobs and their financial security.
Sure.
And so for now, I am holding off raising my prices, but I probably will do it in the middle of the year.
I am thinking of the same. I actually did raise a little bit, but I think the best time of the year is the end of financial year, and we start giving. So that's going to be my model, because then stuff, it's expensive and we're all kind of reeling.
And I mean, you're coming out of Christmas into January and people are like, well, I just loaned it for Christmas and I don't have any money to spare and all that stuff. So it's like, don't raise the prices there. So timing of raising your prices is a consideration, and also being aware of what's going on in the social environment, because I mean there might be something that's very local to you that's having an impact on the clients that are coming to you, and you need to be sensitive to that. And not to say that you need to bend over backwards to accommodate it, but you do need to be aware and actually hold a space of like, well, is this the right time to do this? Is this the right time to raise my prices?
Yeah.
That being said, if you are not making ends meet, then you do need to raise your prices.
Probably most therapists need to raise their prices by about 20% at least. Because all of that, your hourly rate, I did someone and they calculated this, their minute, what they charge per minute. It's ridiculous. Like it could be like $1 a minute or something. I mean, and then you've got, say, rental, promotion, webs. It costs a lot to run a business.
Yes. And I think one of the challenges is when you go into business, you think you have to have it all there at once, and actually you don't. So it's learning about what's the essential things for my business right now, and what are the things that are nice to have, but I don't need them just yet. And that's been the process for me. I mean, I've been in a really fortunate position in that I have my wife has been working full time the whole time I've been in private practice, so I haven't had to get the business to a point where it was supporting the family at this point. That's changing, but yes, certainly that's taken the pressure off and given me the freedom to be able to experiment with a whole bunch of things and to do a whole bunch of things low cost, and to then do some investments in things to see how they paid off. Now I've made some bad investments, but with stuff that it wasn't the right time for me to do it, but I got suckered into doing some things sooner than I probably was ready for. And that's part of the learning in some respects. So I think we all do it, but it's just sort of weighing things up and working out what is necessary. And that's one of the things that I'm really conscious of. That when I developed a therapy business booster program, it was like there were two things. One is that so many therapists go into business and they don't have any idea of what's involved in running a business. So there's basically I'm looking at five key areas that I'm focusing on here, and basically it's your marketing, which has a whole bunch of things underneath that. Your business systems and procedures and processes, which make things streamlined. The self-care was something that I wanted to intentionally include with this, because too often business owners go into running a business and forget that if they're not doing well, their business won't do well. And they don't plan for their well-being at all. And so therefore they get themselves in situations where they're financially stressed, they're working just extraordinary hours to be able to get the income to be able to make the business viable, and then they fall on a heap, and then nobody's doing anything and the business falls apart.
And saying yes to everyone when they're not necessarily a good fit, because I think it really needs to be a decision between the client and therapist. Hang on. Because
you need to know how I work. You need to make sure that you're okay with that. I need to get a sense of what it is that you're bringing to the table to make sure that I can actually work with what you're bringing, and can do a good job with that. To be honest, I've only ever had one client that they disqualified themselves, and I'm glad they did, because I don't know if I could have worked with it. But it's that the whole self-care piece is quite important, and it weaves through everything that you do as a business. So anyway, so marketing, business systems and processes, self-care, customer service is an interesting thing. And the reason that I've cottoned on to the customer service thing is because when I was doing the business training, part of what I was doing was actually teaching people about customer service. I was working in a hospitality organization. So customer service was definitely stressed and really, really, really highlighted in that context. But I realized that every business has a level of customer service. And I know for myself, when I first moved into business, I had a bit of a heads up because I'd done the business training. I had a bit of an idea about customer service, but I didn't actually realize that so many therapists don't even think about their customer service, or they only talk about their customer service in terms of what I do with my individual client.
What they're offering, rather than the focus being on the actual, because your client is a customer, you're selling a service, which is maybe you and your skills.
But I mean, and the customer service links in with your marketing. So those things are connected. So I did a couple of years ago. I did a presentation for an online workshop, an online conference where I talked about customer service and therapy and how do they intersect, and talked about this whole idea of like our customers are more than just the clients in the room, and so the clients in the room are our paying customers, but we have other customers that we need to serve just as well, because our customer service is basically our badge of authenticity, our badge of expertise, our badge of professionalism. So, and if you have a bad experience with somebody who is not your client, they are connected to a whole bunch of people who could be your client who may get turned off. So, and I think therapists, particularly therapists who have come out of working for employers, may not be aware of that. So it's kind of like, well, when you're working for an employer, the employer deals with a lot of customer service stuff, and you can focus on the client work. But when you're working for yourself, you don't have that luxury.
You're generally often the first point of call. That is so true. That is amazing, Neville. Because I worked for Fuji Xerox customer service, which is a lot of training, and I didn't realize. And actually, I did an internship I was on the front desk. Boy, you've got to be able to handle whatever, and boy, that is
and learning how to respond to people no matter what state they're coming at you, and holding your cool and being able to work through all that kind of stuff, and how you treat people. How you treat people sends a message. So if you treat your paying clients in a particular way, but then you treat people who are non-paying, that you have interactions with in a way that demeans them, whoa, you've got a disconnect going on right there. And if your paying client sees you treating somebody who's not a paying client in that way, whoa, you have a chance of damaging your therapeutic alliance. So so there's stuff around customer service that needs to be worked through. So that's number 4. So it's like marketing, business systems and processes, self-care, customer service, and finally, the last part of the therapy business booster is like, how do you measure how well you're doing? So, and looking at, there are lots of different measures. Money is certainly one of them, but it's not the only measure. And how do you get appropriate feedback to give you a sense of where what's going well and what needs work? So there's all those kind of issues that need to be worked through. Now, one of the things that I've realized in going into business is that everyone's business is different. So there isn't really a one size fits all. I mean, yes, you need to address those 5 issues, but what that looks like in each individual business will vary, because there is a context that comes into play. There is your own personal style and approach comes into this as well, and your background experience and what you're good at, those kind of things. I mean, for me, admin is one of the things that I quite enjoy doing, but other people don't. It's not something that they like to do. So they may actually outsource some things, because for them it's much easier to pay somebody to do it than to sit there and struggle with it themselves. And I mean, I've got ideas about things I want to outsource, because there's some things that I don't want to work on in my business. They take up lots of time, and I would rather spend my energy elsewhere. So working through those kind of issues as well is really important. So to sit there and compare your business with someone else's business actually isn't very helpful, because you might be working with completely different client sets. Your locality might be different. The room space, the space in which you work might be really different, and that has an influence too. So it's sort of paying attention to all of these things. It's like, yes, I can look at them and say, yeah, they're using these kind of tools and maybe that might be useful, but I need to then weigh it up. Is this going to help me in my business? And sometimes you have to say, well, I'm glad it works for them. It's not working for me. I don't think that's going to fit with the way that I want to work. I mean, I spent ages looking for a scheduling tool, because I wanted to just start doing online booking. And partly because of my package system, I was finding a lot of scheduling tools couldn't accommodate for that. So there were lots of ones that people were saying, oh, I really love working with this one. I really love working with this one. I really love working with this one. And then I'd go look it up and go, it doesn't do what I want it to do. The one I've got now is almost there.
Almost there, yeah.
It's almost there. The one piece that I want to have involved in there is doing the invoicing, but there's some trickiness around that because of, again, of the package approach that I'm using. And so I've actually got to work out how I'm going to make that work. But that's a learning process of like, what do I actually need? And it's funny, I sat there and I did a list for myself of what I was looking for in a scheduling system. And so when I was looking at a scheduling system, I looked for these particular items, and the ones at the top were the ones that were essential. I can't not have these things. And then the ones that were down below were like, well, I've got other ways to deal with these. It would be nice if I could integrate them into the booking system so that it streamlines my process, but I can actually work with it if I can't. And yeah, so having those kind of conversations with yourself around like, what is it that I need? What is it that I'm looking for? What can I do without at this particular moment in time? And yeah, all of those are really, really important conversations. And the Therapy Business Booster, what I'm trying to do is, one, get people to understand what's involved in running a business and get that framework going of like, here are the pieces that I need to be keeping tabs on in addition to my client work. These are the things that I need to be keeping tabs on. And yeah, all that kind of stuff, and understanding what that means in my context. So having the opportunity to sit there and explore, what is marketing? Like, I have an idea of what marketing is, but what is it? And what will marketing look like in my business? Because there are certain marketing processes that won't work for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and there are certain things that, because we're therapists, we actually can't do, like client testimonials, which so many other businesses can actually leverage that, but we cannot because of the ethical implications for the client. And what I discovered when I was doing general business networking is that other businesses don't get that.
No.
So I wanted to provide a space for therapists to actually say, let's acknowledge that this is an issue. How do we work around it?
And there is a workaround. There is.
Yeah, definitely are workarounds, but you need to actually acknowledge that it's there and not sit there and try and push that, hey, you've got to do testimonials, because that's a no-go for our field.
It's really
Yeah. So that's the thing around having the space to actually experiment or to explore with a group of people who are walking the same journey. It was something that I really wanted to make sure was happening. So while the content is self-paced and you can work at it in your own time frame, you've got 12 months to do this course. You could probably do it in 3 if you really want to rush it. Yeah, but you have the opportunity, if you have weekly group coaching sessions, to be able to sit there and talk about, I'm wrestling with this issue. How do I deal with this? And what's going on with that? So you're not doing this journey in isolation, which was my experience. It's like I was building a business and having to learn all about it and not having anybody else who was walking a similar journey.
It can be a really lonely experience, can't it?
Very lonely, and it can. You sit there and go, I've got this myriad of decisions to make, and I don't know how to make these decisions because they're just too overwhelming, and I don't know how to prioritize what's going on here. And so I'll bumble along and I'll make something work, but I'm limping along. I limped along for years, like trying to make my business work. And again, as I said, I was in a fortunate position where I didn't have to have the business being financially viable to support me to live. But it took me ages to get to a point where the business was actually even paying for itself. And that's
it does.
It can take a while, and some of that is about not knowing how to do things in a way that's cost effective.
So it sounds like the Therapy Business Boost is a real fast track, and people will be tapping into your expertise. I mean, already people listening to this will have gathered some gold because I'm hearing raise your fees, change your business model.
Yeah.
to a package system that works for you, and already that will be gold. And then they'll be wanting to hear more from you, Neville.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that you've got 12 months to work on this. It's like the goal of the Therapy Business Booster is essentially, by the end of 12 months, your business will be in a different place. Now, it may not be exactly where you want it to be, but it will hopefully be moving in that direction, and you'll be so much more confident in knowing what are the steps I need to take to keep it going in the direction that I want it to go. One of the things that I'm contemplating, and I'm not there yet, but with the business, the people who go through the Therapy Business Booster, is actually having like an alumni that can continue to connect with each other, to support each other in their ongoing journey in private practice. Because I feel like sometimes we go and do these courses and then we lose our support network because we left or we finished. And that's a gap for me. And I think it's also one of the things that actually encourages the Lone Ranger type of approach. And you end up making decisions that if you'd had somebody to bounce the idea off, you might have actually made a different decision that might have not burned you. So there's the option of doing that going into the future, but we're not there yet. So
I love that. It's a great idea. Unity.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, if you think about therapy, we have supervision. I
Yes.
encourage people, if you learn a program, I always offer like actually a couple of free supervision sessions, because it's not just enough to come to the learning. You need to be able to practice it, then come back and bring those questions like what worked.
Yes. And to have a safe space where you can actually talk about like, oh, this bombed. Why did it bomb? Okay, I don't know why it bombed. What happened? Or this went really, really, really well. How can I leverage this going forward? To be able to have that space, to be able to say that kind of stuff, I think is really good. And I think also what I'm hoping for, and this is one of my hidden agenda, and not so hidden anymore, I'm going to tell you about it, but my hidden agenda is to actually sit there and get therapists supporting each other, because I'm really concerned that particularly where things are in Australia, there are territorial wars around, I'm a psychologist, so I'm this, or I'm a social worker, or I've got this modality of counselling, and therefore I'm better than you, or I've got this, or I've got that, and I don't want to share any of my information with you because you're just not in my league. And unfortunately that is out there. That is out there, and I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful for therapists. I don't think it's helpful for clients either, because it basically communicates a whole message that there is some therapy that's better than others. And actually, when it comes down to it, the research says that the most effective influence on the therapeutic process is the relationship with the therapist.
And also on that, Neville, I think, hang on, we ethically are so kind and caring with our clients. That needs to be transferred to a professionalism and respect.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ethical, okay, you're different to me. That's fine. I respect you. I honor you. I'm not,
and I'm not threatened by your difference.
Yeah.
I'm not threatened by your difference. And I mean, unfortunately, you get issues like the Medicare stuff here in Australia plays into this as well. And it's like some people can access, some people can't, some people don't want to. And all of those kind of conversations are just muddying the waters. And it's just like, ultimately, we're here to support people to wellness. How we do that is going to be unique to us and the training we've chosen to do. And the clients, they have their choice to make as to who they want to work with. And I'm quite happy for people to go through a mental health care plan and access a psychologist if that's what they feel that they need. But I also want to let them know that that's not their only option.
Exactly.
So it's like, if you would like to work in a different way, or if you would prefer to have access to somebody who's not in a medical space or connected with the Medicare system, if you'd like some kind of freedom around that, if you want to focus in on body stuff, whatever it is that the client is looking for, there's something out there that will cater for them. And we should be promoting that diversity, not sitting there saying it's like this is the best way to do therapy.
I totally agree. And with, like I said, that beautiful, we need to be charitable,
Yes.
with kindness
Yes.
and respect, because
Yes.
and if we're modeling that as therapists,
Yes.
I think those are the therapists clients want to see.
Yes.
That people are saying, oh, that's why, you know, I want to, I'm pretty inclusive. I talk to a lot of people, and I'm like, anything that helps.
Yes. And this is it. It's like, what's going to help one person may not help another.
Exactly.
So it's like, and I've come to a place where I for quite some time where I basically say to clients, before they sign up for a package, do one session with me to see if I'm the right fit.
That's really ethical.
Because it's like, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm the right person for you. You need that opportunity to get to know me and feel comfortable that if we do some extended work, that you're going to be able to stay to make it through the process with me.
Sounds to me a little bit like, Neville, you're setting a beautiful mutual goal and expectations of therapy, which I think is really important.
Yep.
We don't have any magic wands.
No.
And they're going to block a session. You'll do some work. We don't know where that's going to go, but we'll have a plan and a goal, and then we'll work it out.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And and that's just something that's evolved over time for me. It's just kind of like my goal is to work respectfully with the people that choose to work with me. My goal is to empower them to make the decisions about what's going on. I keep getting the question from clients. It's like, oh, you're going to tell me what to do to make me better. It's like, no.
Wow.
No, I'm not going to tell you what to do to make you better. We're going to explore what helps you to feel better, and then you're going to use that information to decide what you're going to do, what you're going to do next. Because I often say to clients in that first session, it's like, I don't have to live your life. So the decisions that you choose to make are your decisions. And if I give you suggestions, they are purely that. They may not work for you. And that doesn't mean that I've given you bad advice. That means that you know something about your life that I don't. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is my job is to facilitate this process for you so that you can do what you need to do. And you're bringing in your expertise about what you know about yourself. And that is critical for this process. So it's like, it's not you're coming to me as the expert to tell you how to run your life. I don't know how to run your life. It's like, I'm struggling just to run my own life. Thank you very much. It's like, so I don't want responsibility for yours as well, but I will help you to find out what is going to work for you.
Really important. Sorry, but you know, in terms of compassion fatigue for therapists, not to take that on. And plenty of clients will want to kind of land everything at your feet.
Yep.
Tell me what to do and when to do it. And you can't. You really have to be. I think I'm hearing from our work here to talk today, limits, boundaries.
Yes.
Really important.
And all of that's coming into your self-care. It's like, if you don't have your boundaries clear, you are going to put yourself in situations that are going to damage you.
Yeah, and adults, we get to choose who works with us and who we work with, because I've started saying no.
Yeah.
Clients actually. And my supervisor's like, no, you don't. And I was like, oh, because I felt over responsible. I think that kind of often seen.
And we do that. We with the best intention to help.
They'll find who they can. And the other thing I now no longer do is I don't refer to anyone else. The reason being, nothing to do disrespectful to anyone. I don't know what their caseload is like. I don't know if they're going to be a good fit. I just give them a list, like a web list, go there, find someone, do your research. Like you're buying a mortgage or a restaurant, you want to choose based on your budget, based on your factors. What do you need next?
Yep. And I mean, and often what I say to clients when they come to do that first session with me is like, if you find that I'm not the right fit, I'm not going to be offended if you say no. I'm not going to purchase a package. That's totally fine. I'd much rather you find out now than to sit there and struggle through a 5 or a 10 session package going as I hate being here and I don't click with this person and this is a load of crock. So I mean, and I don't want to have to work with somebody who's in that space either. So it's just like I want you to be able to work out what it is that you're looking for. And if I'm not it, that's okay. Because at least by having this conversation, you have a better idea of what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So, and that's just I don't take it personally when people decide not to work with me.
No, no one's
Sometimes I sit there like, yeah, I'd like your money, but yeah, really, you have to make that decision.
not everyone's going to like everyone. It's sort of,
Yeah.
and some people are just going to love you. That's great.
Yeah.
And then they're the ones that are going to refer to you because they're like, oh, you know, my friend said,
yeah,
and then
yeah. And then I have to sit there and say, it's like, oh, look, we're not talking about your friend here, remember?
I sometimes don't even ask anymore. Well, Neville, thank you. Thank you. What would be perhaps one last another nugget that you would give to people, just if they're starting out, or they're people that you know, looking back on your reflections, because you've already done so much, and if you're not, you've got to sign up for the therapy booster package.
I would say if you're contemplating private practice, or if you're in private practice, if you don't have a big picture view about what your business is doing, I'd make that a priority, because sometimes we get caught on all the details of all the things that we feel should be in business, but we don't really have a sense of why they need to be there, or even if they need to be there. So I mean, classic cases like websites. Everybody says you need to have a website if you're going into business.
Well, you don't.
I don't have a website, and I haven't had a website for several years now. I used to have a website, and it's one of the things that I want to outsource if I ever decide to have another one, because it's a lot of work, and you need to know what your website is for. So it's just like, if you're not clear about why you have a website, just saying that you have to have a website is not sufficient. There's an investment of time and an investment of money, and you need to be really clear that this is the right time to do this.
So remember the why.
Remember the why, and make sure that you have a why that's involved in all that kind of process. There was something else that I was just going to say, and I've lost it. But anyway,
it'll come to you in a moment.
Yes. So so the whole thing about understanding what your business is trying to achieve, and what's the life that you actually want your business to help you to create. Your business shouldn't be your life. Your business should facilitate a life. And that's sometimes we get confused between those two things, because we invest so much of ourselves in our business that we sort of it becomes enmeshed, and it shouldn't be.
Good, sound, practical.
So
picture, not putting the cart before the horse, making the business part of not all of you who you are.
Yes.
That burns out as well. I imagine so much through your own experience. It's like and it's so important.
Absolutely, it's critical to think through those things, and sometimes we don't know the questions to ask about that. So, which is why I developed the Therapy Business Booster, so that you have the opportunity and the space to ask those kind of questions and to be challenged to think about these kind of things, because otherwise you're chasing the next bright shiny object, thinking that this is going to solve all my problems, and it won't. It won't solve all your problems. It might solve one piece, but it might create other problems, and it may not solve the bigger issues that you're dealing with. So
I often find some people get stuck in their own stuff. It might be worth doing some own work of money, and this brings up personal issues that you say, I can't, or some beliefs that you have, they need to be worked through. Find your own therapist. Because that'll free you up to really take your therapy and your business to more people. In
a way that's sustainable and ethical. So the business is not a short-term thing. You need to be thinking long-term.
I love that. Sustainable and ethical. Thank you. Those are the probably catchphrases of today. Wonderful. Thank you, Neville, for
you're very welcome.
Wonderful presentation. I know people got a lot of information there, and we'll pop something down in the thing. Please like and subscribe. I've got on March 13th and 14th, we're running a foundation program of resource therapy, which is a really powerful adjunct to helping you deal with parts. Parts therapy is really big because you're working with the part. Perhaps you've got a part that can't ask for more money or is a bit stuck. That's how to process it. So it's a really fun, interactive, hopefully hybrid and online workshop Chris and I are running. So have a look at that. I'll put a link, and there'll be a link to Neville's email. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Neville.
And I'm not sure that I left you with a link to a calendar booking. If you wanted to have a talk about therapy business booster, I can give you a link to my calendar so that people can just book in a time that suits them to have a chat about that. So if I haven't given that to you, I'll make sure that you have it before you post.
Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.